The bright morning sun filled my mother's elaborate Victorian dining room, illuminating the carefully prepared Easter brunch. Crystal and china gleamed, lilies graced the table, everything perfect, unlike me. At 31, in simple clothes, I was the family outlier, a writer prioritizing words over wealth. My brother Marcus, 35, the golden child investment banker, arrived first, impeccably suited with his accessory-like wife, Jennifer. "Sorry we're late," he said, feigning regret, citing a Tokyo call. My sister Veronica, looking straight from a country club ad, arrived next with David. A manager of high-end boutiques, she declared, traffic terrible. Some people don't have anywhere important to be, a jab at me, living 4 blocks away above the used bookstore where I worked part-time, proving, to them, my lack of ambition. "Where's Dad?" I asked, noticing his empty chair. "Golf," Mom replied, implying it was my fault. "He'll be along shortly, though he's not thrilled about having to cut his game short for." She vaguely gestured at me. Aunt Helen, 68, Mom's older sister and family social arbiter, bustled in with mimosas. "Good, everyone's here," she said, pausing at me. "Well, almost everyone who matters." I dished scrambled eggs, used to the familiar sting of being an afterthought. This was 5 years of it, 5 years since leaving corporate marketing to write. Full-time, 5 years of being the cautionary tale, the daughter who'd wasted potential on pipe dreams. "So, Lily," Jennifer began, gracefully settling in. "Still at that little bookstore?" "Among other things," I replied neutrally. Marcus laughed dismissively. "Other things, like your little writing hobby?" I thought of the email yesterday from Penguin Random House, confirming my latest novel hit #1 on every bestseller list, a rare feat. I said nothing. "It's not a hobby if you're trying to make money," Veronica chimed, "though if you're not making money, that's exactly what it is." Dad arrived as the main course was served, still in golf shoes, annoyed his game was cut short. Robert Sinclair. 6 feet tall, silver-haired, commanded attention, 30 years of closing $1 million commercial real estate deals, giving him presence. Sorry, he said, kissing Mom's cheek and sitting. Had to finish the back 9. Thompson was about to sign the Harbor District contract. "Business on Easter, darling?" Mom asked, clearly approving. "Success doesn't take holidays, Margaret." He surveyed the table, his eyes settling on me with familiar disappointment. "Speaking of which, Lily, your mother tells me you're still playing writer." The word hit like a slap. I'd been writing seriously for 8 years, publishing for 5, but to him, it was always a playing. "I'm still writing, yes." "Any actual sales this quarter?" Marcus asked, carving ham precisely. "Or are we still talking about artistic fulfillment? And exposure?" I considered my 7-figure royalty statement from last month, but they'd never believe it. I wasn't ready to share. "Some sales," I said simply. Veronica snorted. "Come on, Lily. Real numbers. How much did you actually make last year?" "Profit, not just gross sales from those tiny independent bookstores." The irony was painful. Last year, I'd earned more than all of them combined, but I lived simply, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and worked part-time at Mrs. Chen's bookstore because I loved its community. "Writing is such an uncertain field," Aunt Helen said, spreading jam. "No stability, no benefits, no real future. It's fine as a hobby, dear, but you really should consider a backup plan, or a main plan," Dad added pointedly. "Thompson's company is expanding their marketing department. I could put in a good word. Get you back into the real world." The real world. As if the world I'd built, readers telling me my books changed their lives, teachers using my novels, young writers calling me their inspiration, wasn't real. "I appreciate the offer, Dad, but I'm happy where I am." "Happy?" Marcus nearly choked on his mimosa. "Lily, you live in a studio apartment above a bookstore. Your car's older than some of my interns. You shop at thrift stores. That's not happiness. That's denial." At least she's not dependent on family money, Jennifer added with false sweetness, though I suppose that means she's actually making some income from her writing. Before I could respond, Aunt Helen's phone chimed. She frowned. Oh, how interesting. The New York Times just sent their weekly bestseller alert. She scrolled, her frown deepening. They're featuring some romance author who's apparently broken all kinds of records. My heart quickened. Today was the day my publisher said the news would break. Romance novels, Veronica scoffed. The literary equivalent of junk food. Though I suppose if you can't write real literature, at least there's money in trash. 50 million copies, Aunt Helen read. It says this author has sold 50 million copies across 17 novels. Goodness, that's quite a lot, isn't it? Dad perked up, numbers always got his attention. 50 million. What kind of money are we talking about? Aunt Helen scrolled further. The article estimates her net worth at, oh my, $120 million. A profound silence fell. I heard the grandfather clock ticking, distant lawnmowers. $120 million, Marcus repeated slowly. From romance novels. Apparently, she started with small publishers and built her reputation over time, Aunt Helen continued. She writes under a pen name and is notoriously private about her personal life. Very mysterious. Jennifer leaned over. What's her name? Maybe I've heard of her. Al Hartwell, Aunt Helen replied. Though the article says that's not her real name. Apparently, nobody knows who she actually is. The room went completely silent. My face warmed as 6 pairs of eyes slowly turned to me. Lily, Mom said slowly. Your middle name is Anne, and our maiden name was Hartwell. I sipped orange juice. Lots of people have those names, Mom. But Aunt Helen was staring, phone forgotten. Lily and Hartwell Sinclair, she whispered. Al Hartwell. Marcus leaned forward, banker instincts kicking in. That's impossible. Lily works at a bookstore for minimum wage. Actually, I said quietly, I work at the bookstore because I enjoy it. And it's not minimum wage. I own 40% of it. The silence stretched longer. Dad's fork stopped midair. Veronica stared. You're Al Hartwell? Jennifer whispered. I pulled out my phone, opening my author website. There was my photo, my bio, my 17 published novels lined up, every cover adorned with New York Times bestseller badges. I'm Al Hartwell. Aunt Helen's phone clattered onto her plate. But you live above a bookstore. Because I like it there. It's quiet. I can walk to work, and Mrs. Chen makes excellent tea. I scrolled through my phone, pulling up more evidence. I also own a cabin in Vermont where I do most of my writing, and a small house in Provence that I use for research trips. Research trips? Dad repeated faintly. For the historical romance series, I like to visit the actual locations I'm writing about. I showed them photos. This is from last month in Scotland, researching the Highlands series. Marcus was on his phone, searching. Holy. He breathed. Sorry, Mom, but Lily, the Blackthorn Chronicles series? You wrote that? All 7 books? Yes. Jennifer's been obsessed with those books for 2 years, he said, staring at his wife. She's read them like 6 times each. Jennifer's face went from pale to bright red. You're kidding, Marcus. Your sister wrote the Blackthorn series? I have signed copies in our bedroom. Wait, Veronica said, disbelief sharp in her voice. If you're really this famous author, why are you living like this? He gestured at my simple outfit. Living like what? Comfortably. Simply. I took another bite of eggs. Veronica, what exactly do you think success looks like? Success looks like showing it, she snapped. Success looks like designer clothes and luxury cars and not working retail. I don't work retail. I'm a best-selling author who happens to enjoy helping Mrs. Chen run her bookstore 3 days a week. I pulled up another screen. Would you like to see last month's royalty statement? I turned the phone toward them. The number at the bottom made Aunt Helen gasp. That's just 1 month? Dad asked. That's 1 month, though it was a particularly good month. 3 of my backlist titles got picked up for Netflix adaptations. Netflix adaptations? Mom spoke for the first time in minutes. The Midnight Garden Trilogy. They're starting production this fall. I swiped to my email, showing correspondence with the streaming platform. I'm executive producing, which means I have creative control over the adaptations. Marcus was still scrolling. The articles. They're calling you one of the most successful indie to traditional crossover authors in publishing history. Indie to traditional? Dad looked confused. I started by self-publishing on Amazon, I explained. Built a readership, proved the market existed, then major publishers started bidding for my backlist and future books. It's actually a fairly common path now, though I was one of the early success stories. But why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice was small, wounded. I set down my fork and looked at their faces. When would I have told you? During which conversation? About my failure to launch, which lecture about needing to get serious about my life? An uncomfortable silence followed. Memories of countless family gatherings flickered between us, times they dismissed my writing, suggested I needed a real job, compared me to Marcus and Veronica's traditional success. Last Christmas, I continued, you told me I was embarrassing the family by not having a proper career. At Thanksgiving, Dad suggested I was too old to still be chasing childhood dreams. And just 20 minutes ago, Marcus called my writing a hobby. We didn't know, Jennifer said weakly. You didn't ask. I pulled up my Amazon author page, showing them the wall of 5-star reviews, millions of ratings, fan comments from around the world. You assumed. You saw where I lived and how I dressed and decided you knew everything about my life. Dad cleared his throat. Lily, we thought. We were being supportive, encouraging you to pursue stability. Stability? I laughed, without humor. Dad, I own my apartment building. The entire building. I bought it 2 years ago because I liked living there and wanted to ensure my neighbors wouldn't be displaced by gentrification. More stunned silence. Veronica was frantically Googling. The bookstore, she said suddenly. You said you own 40% of it. Mrs. Chen's son wanted to sell when she got sick last year. I bought his share to keep it in the family, then bought another 10% from an investor who was pressuring her to change the store's character. How much? Marcus started, then stopped. How much what? How much are you actually worth? I considered the question. Financial privacy was always important, but they'd pushed. Forbes estimated $120 million last year, but that was before the Netflix deal and the new publishing contract. I showed them the article Aunt Helen had been reading. This year, it'll probably be closer to $150 million. The number hung in the air. Dad's golf triumph seemed small. Marcus's Tokyo call, insignificant. Veronica's boutiques, like toy stores. But you drive a Honda, Jennifer whispered. It's reliable and environmentally responsible. I smiled slightly. I'm not against spending money. I just prefer to spend it on things that matter, like preserving community bookstores, supporting literacy programs, and ensuring my neighbors aren't displaced by rising rents. Literacy programs? Mom asked. I pulled up another folder. The Hartwell Foundation. We've built 12 libraries in underserved communities and sponsor writing workshops for kids who can't afford them. The photos showed ribbon cuttings, children with new books, young writers with their first published stories. Last year, we gave out $2 million in grants. Aunt Helen was crying, tears streaming. I told you to get a backup plan, she sobbed. I told you writing wasn't secure. You were trying to protect me, I said gently. I understand that. No, you don't understand. She fumbled for her napkin. 60 years ago, I wanted to be a writer, too. I had stories, characters, whole worlds in my head. But everyone said it was impractical, unrealistic. So, I became a secretary instead. She looked at me with pride and heartbreak. You did what I was too scared to do. You followed your dreams and made them real. Dad studied his hands, his golf triumph forgotten. When you left the marketing job, he said slowly, I thought you were making the biggest mistake of your life. I know. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. I know that, too. He looked up, meeting my eyes. I was wrong. Before I could respond, my phone rang. My agent. Sorry, I should take this, I said, answering. Lily, it's Sarah. My agent's voice said. I hope you're sitting down. We just got word that the International Publishers Association wants to present you with their Lifetime Achievement Award. You'd be the youngest recipient in their history. I stepped away from the table, trying to process. The Lifetime Achievement Award? But I'm only 31. Exactly. They're recognizing the unprecedented impact you've had on global literacy. The Foundation's work, the international sales figures, the way you've bridged traditional and indie publishing. They want to honor all of it. When would this be? The ceremony is in London next month. Black tie, red carpet, the whole production. The BBC wants to do a documentary about your career journey, and there's talk of a keynote address at the London Book Fair. I glanced back at my family, watching me with awe and confusion. Sarah, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of a family situation. Of course. But Lily, congratulations. You've really done something special. After hanging up, I walked back. That was my agent, I said, sitting down. I'm receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Publishers Association next month. Lifetime Achievement, Marcus repeated slowly. At 31. Apparently, they've never had someone impact global literacy quite like this at such a young age. I pulled up the email Sarah sent. They're also doing a BBC documentary about my career. Mom stood suddenly, her chair scraping. She hugged me fiercely. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. And I'm so sorry we didn't see it sooner. The floodgates opened. Veronica started crying, apologizing. Marcus kept shaking his head, muttering about misjudging publishing. Jennifer was already ordering my entire backlist on her phone. I have a confession, Dad said as the emotional storm settled. I've actually read one of your books. Everyone stared. The Highland Chief, he continued, cheeks slightly red. Your mother had it on her nightstand. I picked it up one night, thinking I'd read a few pages. And? I asked. I finished it in one sitting. Then I read the whole series. He cleared his throat. They're actually quite good. Historically accurate, well-plotted, compelling characters. Not what I expected from romance novels. Romance is the best-selling fiction genre in the world, Dad. Has been for decades. I'm learning that. He stood, walking to the window overlooking Mom's garden. Lily, I owe you an apology. Not just for today, but for years of dismissing something I didn't understand. You don't need to. Yes, I do. He turned. I spent so many years worried about your financial security that I never bothered to understand what you were building. I was so focused on traditional markers of success that I missed the fact that you'd created something extraordinary. Aunt Helen had recovered. The foundation, she said, the literacy programs. Can you tell us more about that? For the next hour, I shared stories from my real life, libraries in rural communities, writing workshops, scholarships. I showed photos from my travels, research trips, school visits where teachers used my books, letters from parents and other authors. You're not just a successful author, Veronica said softly. You're changing lives. That's always been the goal. Money provides security and lets me support causes. But the real success is in the connection with readers. Marcus, absorbed in his phone, looked up. I've been reading articles about you. There's one from Publishers Weekly calling you the author who redefined what publishing success looks like in the digital age. That's very flattering. And another from The Guardian about how your foundation's literacy work has reached over 1 million children in 12 countries. We're hoping to expand to 20 by next year. Jesus, Lily, he set down his phone. I've been sitting here, feeling smug about my investment returns while you've been quietly building an empire and changing the world. They're not mutually exclusive, Marcus. You're good at what you do, but what I do is move money around to make more money. What you do is bigger than that. Dad returned to his seat, thoughtful. The awards ceremony in London. Will you want us there? The question surprised me. Would you want to be there? Of course, Mom said immediately. We should have been supporting you all along. I don't know if there's room. These events usually have limited seating. Then we'll watch the BBC stream, Veronica said. We'll throw a viewing party here. Invite the whole family, all the neighbors, show them what real success looks like. As the afternoon wound down, conversation shifted to logistics and future plans. Marcus wanted investment advice. Veronica asked about trademark protection. Dad inquired about tax implications. But Aunt Helen asked the most important question. Lily, dear, she said, clearing the table. Are you happy? I paused, thinking of my apartment, my quiet writing mornings, emails from readers. Yes, I said simply. I'm happy. Good, she squeezed my hand. That's the only success that really matters. Driving home in my Honda, my phone buzzed with texts from family sharing news of my success. Photos of my book covers appeared on social media. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 5 years, I'd been their embarrassment. Now, in one Easter brunch, I was their crown jewel. But as I pulled into my parking spot, I realized their opinion never mattered. What mattered was staying true to my vision, building something meaningful, and making a living doing what I loved. Mrs. Chin was watering plants. How was family brunch? She asked with a knowing smile. Educational, I replied. For all of us. Ah. She nodded wisely. Sometimes the people who know us longest understand us least. I climbed the stairs, thinking of London, the new contract. The story ideas. Tomorrow, I'd call Sarah, review grant applications, answer family emails. But tonight, I'd write the next chapter. Because that's what writers do, write stories that matter, trust they'll matter to others, and define success one word at a time. 3 months later, on the red carpet in London, I wore a designer gown. The International Publishers Association showered me with honors, the BBC documentary crew followed. Accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award, I saw my family in the front row, beaming. When I started writing, I said, I had no idea it would lead here. I wrote because I had stories to tell, characters who demanded their voices be heard. The success that followed was built on that foundation. Authentic storytelling and genuine connection with readers. Later, Dad found me. I've been thinking about success. Your mother and I want to start a scholarship fund for young writers. We'd like to name it after you. Tears pricked my eyes. Dad, that's wonderful, but you don't need to name it after me. Yes, we do. He smiled, genuinely, for the first time in years. We need to make up for lost time and we want other families to recognize what we almost missed. That success comes in many forms, and the best kind is the kind that makes the world a little bit better. As the evening ended, I reflected on our journey. 5 years of family disappointment, quiet determination. real victory wasn't awards or money or even newfound respect. It was staying true to my vision when everyone thought I was lost. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's proving yourself right, one story at a time.